What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the statement. It's your boy Manny. Today I'm here rocking solo dolo. I know usually you're used to going ahead and seeing guests along with me, but today is just gonna be me. So hopefully, it's not a problem. Hopefully, you guys just want to go ahead and hear my beautiful voice. Nonetheless, though, let's go ahead and get into the episode. Today we're going to be speaking about the NFL draft, something that I every single year am 110% super excited for to go ahead and watch, see, all the things, when it comes to the workouts, the pro days, the combine, the interviews, going ahead and leading up to the draft, watching all the mock drafts and everything like that on, NFL Network, CBS, ESPN, FS1, all those different networks and everything like that. I love it. It's honestly one of my favorite times of the year, and it somewhat competes itself with, the NFL season in totality. Just because, like, I love seeing how NFL teams go through after free agency, how they evaluate players, who they draft, and just watching certain teams just make like the dumbest decisions ever. Like for me, perfect example when the Steelers drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round. I don't know if I still have the text. I may be able to find them in case of anybody being, wanting to know. But I have text that I sent to my best friend who's a Steelers fan with like a million different laughing emojis because I knew the second that they drafted him that it was a terrible pick. And then I said the same thing for Mac Jones when the Patriots drafted him. Now, unfortunately, I'm a Patriots fan. So seeing us waste a first round pick definitely was not okay. Like I was heartbroken, but not as heartbroken as Kenny Pickett was because at least Mac Jones made a Pro Bowl. He sucks. He's ass. Terrible. I hate him. It's always going to be fuck Mac Jones. But at the end of the day, he made a Pro Bowl. So a lot better than Kenny Pickett. Nonetheless, though, um, I love the draft. I love everything about it. So today, what I want to go ahead and do is I want to break down Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network. I want to break down his most recent, mock draft. Go through like the top 10, maybe 15 picks, and just go through what he says and give my, opinions on it. So we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna break right into it. So with the number one overall pick, he has the Chicago Bears drafting Caleb Williams. Now I think everybody is pretty much, just all in unanimous, agreement that Caleb Williams is going number one, especially now that the Bears got rid of Justin Fields. Something that is kind of bittersweet to see because I'm a big Justin Fields fan. I still believe in Justin Fields, and I think that Justin Fields can most definitely be a solid starter for an NFL franchise somewhere. I guess just not in Chicago anymore. But nonetheless, now that they got rid of Justin Fields and made room for Caleb Williams, or for at least another quarterback, Caleb Williams is most likely going to be the option to go ahead and go number one overall. Because I mean, like we all saw it last year, dude won the Heisman, balled out, and then this year, even though it wasn't another Heisman season, we still saw all the talent flash. I think for USC overall, it was a down year compared to what we had before. I do think the departure of Jordan Addison and some other key pieces on like his offensive line and towards that defense definitely didn't go ahead and help him out because we saw, when he had a little bit more NFL veteran, college players around him, that they were a win against Utah away from a college football playoff appearance. Had they beaten Utah in their final game of the year, they would have made it into the playoffs, but they lost. So that kind of is what knocked him out. And then you lose a few guys because we all see what Jordan Addison just did this last year in the NFL. We all know that he's an absolute stud and what a true number one, makes a difference for a quarterback, not just in the NFL, but in college in general. And even with a down year for him, he still performed exceptionally well. Statistically, he was still in the top portion of all quarterbacks in the country. And then on top of it, too, we saw all the big plays that he made. Now, granted, did he reach for a lot of plays and did he make a lot more mistakes because of reaching? Yes. But in his position, when you feel that sense of urgency that you always have to go ahead and make a play because you never know what's going to happen on the next possession because, things with your defense are a little bit spotty, then I understand where he's coming from. Now, going and playing for Chicago, it's crazy because last year, Chicago low-key was a dumpster fire. Now, with the additions and the changes that they've made to the roster, it's one of the best landing spots for a rookie QB out there. Now, granted, unless the coaching staff goes ahead and messes everything up on paper after their free agent, additions, this roster already looks a million times better. Like, go ahead and think about this. So they have the number 1 and the number 9 pick this year in the draft. So you have 2 top 10 picks because their first this year was because of the trade with Carolina last year. So 2 top 10 picks, right? So 1 is going to go Caleb. And then at 9, they're going to have another difference maker that we'll talk about later. But let's just go ahead and look at what they have right now in their receiving core. So I believe Mooney left, but you still have DJ Moore, you still have Cole Kmet, and now they have Keenan Allen. So you have right now have 3 weapons, reliable, true reliable weapons to go after. DJ Moore is a solid number 1 receiver. We've seen what DJ Moore does. Nobody complains about DJ Moore. Everybody knows that DJ Moore is one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. And then you go to Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has been Mr. Consistency. It's like him and Mike Evans. Throughout their entire career, they've never been known as like the top receiver or a top 3 receiver in the NFL, but they've always put up true number 1 stats. They've never I can never say that they've ever had bad seasons, the two of them. No matter who's throwing them the football, they've had incredible seasons. So you have those. Then we'll see what they go ahead and add at 9. We'll talk about that more later. But they go ahead and they're now looking to seem like they have somewhat of a legitimate defense. This was, I believe, a 7-win team last year with a worse roster and Justin Fields at the quarterback. And he was gone for like a third of the season too due to injury. So imagine what they could have done if he was healthy the entire year. I think that in addition to Caleb Williams, the free agent moves that they trade, plus the guys that they got at the trade deadline last year, now having a full off season in that Chicago, system, I think at worst, this is a 9-win team and potentially can scurry their way into the playoffs. Yes, I know I don't scurry. But nonetheless, they could potentially have a real shot to make the playoffs. Year 1 with Caleb Williams. Now, I'm not saying that Caleb Williams is going to have a rookie season on like a CJ Stroud kind of level, but it's not impossible. Like, it's really not. If CJ Stroud just gives what the offense takes him and doesn't try to go ahead and always make a big play, stay more focused on his mechanics and just really let the game come to him and just use his God-given talent, with what the coaches are telling him to do, then yeah, like Chicago could easily do great next season. I don't think it's out of question to say that Caleb Williams in this offense can go ahead and take the Chicago Bears to the playoffs. Because on paper, this roster looks playoff ready. Now, am I saying that they're a Super Bowl contender? By no means. By no means am I saying they're a Super Bowl contender. But playoff is a legitimate, chance for the Chicago Bears to go ahead and hit. I really don't think it's out of the realm to say that Chicago can make the playoffs. 7 wins last year with a worse roster. The key components to that roster are still there. It's still the same. Now you're just going ahead and adding, key pieces to fill in like some gaping holes. DJ Moore by himself last year was really the only true wide receiver threat that was there. Now they have an opportunity to give 2 more legitimate threats plus Caleb Williams throwing the ball. Now, like, granted, as I said before, I'm a Justin Fields fan, but I don't think that Justin Fields' ceiling is as high as Caleb Williams. I think their floors are about the same, but I think the ceiling is much higher for Caleb, just because Caleb Williams, he just tends to have a little bit more of the it factor. He tends to go ahead and be able to just make a whole bunch of more off-platform, creative throws that it's just like, when shit is going south, Caleb Williams has shown to be able to go ahead and get you out of bad situations. He does, Houdini type things. And when we see quarterbacks in the NFL who tend to do Houdini type things, it's usually some of the best quarterbacks in all of football in NFL history, even too. Patrick Mahomes does Houdini type things all the time. Aaron Rodgers, who is Caleb Williams comps from a lot of executives and scouts, does Houdini type things all the time in the NFL field. The arm talent is there. The mobility is there. The it factor is there. Big playability is there. Caleb has everything. There is very little to no flaws to Caleb Williams' games from a talent perspective. Now we'll have to go ahead and see in the NFL if he's able to, consistently read NFL defenses, if he's able to go ahead and make the right reads and the right throws and put the ball where it's supposed to be on an NFL level, because we all understand that an NFL level, NFL speed is much different than the college game. Because you could take the best team in college football, stack them against the worst team in the NFL, and the worst team in the NFL is going to 50-piece them 10 games out of 10. We understand this. It's a different beast when it comes to the NFL, and that's why we see so many stars in college go to the NFL and not nearly have the same success. It's a different game. It's like watching a teenage lion face a adult male lion that's the most biggest and brolic one in the pack. It's totally two different worlds. But now we go into pick 2 with the Washington Commanders. Now Daniel Jeremiah has Drake May going number 2. Number 2 is a little bit spotty because we see a lot of different mocks kind of flip it between Drake May at 2 or Jaden Daniels at 2. It's kind of just a preference thing. Now for me personally, I prefer Drake May more, but I'm hoping that Jaden Daniels goes 2. The reason that I say this is because as a Patriots fan, I kind of hoping that Drake May falls to that 3 spot because I like him a little bit more. That's my favorite team. So clearly I'm going to want to see my favorite team go ahead and pick the quarterback that I like more. The quarterback that I like most is Caleb Williams, but he's going 1. So I know the Patriots don't nearly have a shot to go ahead and get him unless they trade heaven and earth to move to the 1, which isn't going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. But Drake May at 2 also makes sense. Now, Washington as a franchise is kind of a shit show. I think that any quarterback that goes there right now is going to go ahead and have their work cut out for them. I think the expectations for them are going to be very, very low in regards to the entirety of the landscape of the NFL. To the Washington fans and the Washington community, their expectations will be high. But to the rest of the NFL world, nobody expects them to succeed anytime soon. Washington has completely gutted their defense over the last few years. I believe it's like 2 or 3 pieces on that defensive line that were top picks for them are now no longer there. It is what it is. Curtis Samuel is gone. He's not there anymore. On that offense, you really just have Terry McLaurin. That's kind of it. That's your big reliable, go-to weapon. It's Scary Terry, and that's it. It's not very, helpful to a quarterback situation. Because of that, I genuinely do think that Jaden Daniels is a much better fit in Washington than Drake May is. Simply because Jaden Daniels has better mobility than Drake May and can create a little bit more. Like if you need a quarterback that can go ahead and kind of carry the offensive load by himself, I think Jaden Daniels is a little bit better suited at that currently right now at this point in time over Drake May. When I see Drake May, I think of Justin Herbert 2.0. That's what I think. That's what screams off the board to me. When I see Jaden Daniels, I don't see a current comparison in the NFL right now, like a player playing right now. I don't really see a comp to Jaden Daniels' play style. I've seen other individuals compare him to Randall Cunningham, which definitely is in the realm, both mobile quarterbacks with great arms and big play potential. I mean, there's a reason that Jaden Daniels went ahead and won the Heisman this year. Now, granted, the dude has 2 studs at wide receivers. It definitely goes ahead and help you out. But we've seen in the past, especially with LSU quarterbacks, that when you have, 2 solid wide receivers that help you showcase your talent, it can transition to the NFL. Look at Joe Burrow. He had JJ and Jamar Chase, and we saw that when he's throwing to NFL guys, yeah, he has the one of the highest ceilings that's possibly out there in the league. So who knows? Maybe it's the same thing with Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, even in his freshman season at Arizona, there was clips of him going online showing him making big plays. And his freshman year, he had Brandon Ayuk that he was throwing to, another NFL guy. So it's kind of one of those things that for Jaden Daniels, the sky is the limit for him. He's another one of those quarterbacks that has a very high ceiling, but I think he has the lowest floor of the three quarterbacks in this class. I think that if anyone were to bust, I'd probably, out of the big three, give it to Jayden Daniels. And I especially go ahead and say that if he lands in Washington, just because the situation isn't necessarily conducive to helping a quarterback really excel, especially in his early years. But at 3, he has Jayden Daniels rather than Drake May going to the New England Patriots. So I'm not going to go ahead and I'm going to get into that too much more. But me personally, I would love to see Drake May fall to 3. Especially now we're going to get into the Patriots side of things and why I think the Patriots is a better fit for the quarterback, especially compared to the Washington Commanders. Is Bill Belichick gone? Yes, but I do think that a lot of the Patriot way mentality kind of thing is still there and present, because now with Jerod Mayo as the head coach, somebody who's played for the New England Patriots for a very long time, I think that it's we can still see Patriots success, especially early on, because a lot of that defense is coming back. New England had a top 5 defense in football last year. This was a team that would hold opponents to single digit points or 10 points in a game consistently. Granted, they lost a lot of games because they couldn't put up points for anything. But imagine what this defense could have looked like had it not had to be on the field and hold the team up as much as it did. Imagine if it actually had a competent offense to go along that defense. So that's what we're going to go ahead and see next year. We could potentially see another top 5 or top 10 defense on that side with a top flight quarterback to go along with it. Now there's rumors of teams wanting to go ahead and move up and take the number 3 spot or the number 4 spot. I pray to God that New England doesn't trade back and actually takes that quarterback at 3. Take one of the 3. One of the 3 is going to work. You look at Caleb, you look at Jayden, you look at Drake. All 3 can fit in New England and help New England now, especially when you're Jerod Mayo. You're a brand new coach. Go get the quarterback right. Bailey Zappi is not going to get it done. I liked Bailey. I thought he would do well. He just proved otherwise. Hopefully with Jerod Mayo's new offensive staff, it's a little bit better than what Bill had given these last few years. I think that whichever 3 of the quarterbacks lands in New England, though, I think they're primed for success a little bit better than whoever lands at 2 with Washington, just because that defense, and the culture around New England is much better than what's over there at Washington. Now at number 4, the Cardinals were supposed to have this spot, but he had the Vikings making a trade with the Cardinals to move up. Now, I don't know which pick he's going ahead and moving. Here, let me see. Yeah, I'm not too sure which one, but the Vikings have 2 first-round picks in this draft. They have the 11th pick and they have the 23rd. So they're probably going to go ahead and end up either moving one or both of those picks in order to go ahead and move up to 4 in this mock draft. I think that the Cardinals, if I'm the Cardinals, you have to get offered a king's ransom to move from 4, because at 4 you have Marvin Harrison Jr. staring you right in the face, being able to be drafted, and he's already expressed interest in playing in Arizona. I think that if you're Arizona, you stay at 4, you take Marvin unless you get a king's ransom. Because imagine Kyler Murray being able to throw to Marvin Harrison Jr. The Arizona Cardinals have shown in the past that when they have a true one, an absolute stud at wide receiver, if he can stay healthy, he's going to have a long, great, prosperous career. We saw it with Larry Legend. This could be the second coming of Larry Legend with Marvin Harrison Jr. if things go properly and Marvin stays healthy. Now, I'm not saying that Marvin Harrison is Larry Fitzgerald, because Larry Fitzgerald is arguably a top 10 receiver ever to play the game, to ever touch a football. But Marvin Harrison Jr., let's just go down the family tree. Look at his dad. His dad's a Hall of Famer. And he, coming out of college, is arguably much better than his pops. So if even if he turns out exactly like his pops, if not better, that's a Hall of Famer that you get at 4. That's one of the top things about being in the top 5 or just the first round in general. In the first round, especially in the top 10, especially in the top 5, and more so at 1, you got to draft a gold jacket player. In every draft, there's always a few guys who are guaranteed gold jackets. We don't know it, but then the second you start playing, you're like, damn, we missed one. It happens every draft. When you're in these type of picks, when you're in these situations, go get a gold jacket guy. If Marvin Harrison is anything like his dad, Marvin Harrison Jr., sorry, if he's anything like his dad, that's a gold jacket receiver walking into your building. Yeah, I think that's going to be a big help for Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, still a huge fan. I'm also a believer in Kyler Murray, just not as highly maybe as some other people. But I think Kyler Murray is a franchise quarterback. He went number one for a reason. He won the Heisman for a reason. He's not bad by any stretch of the means, and he is still one of the best mobile quarterbacks, possibly top three in all of football. When we talk to mobile running quarterbacks, I think it goes Lamar 1, Justin 2, Kyler 3. So he's top three quarterbacks in regards to leg talent, and we know that he can throw the rock around anywhere that you need him to. He's the best high school quarterback in Texas football history. The dude can play. Go get him, Marvin Harrison Jr. That's a future Hall of Famer if he stays healthy and things play out right. So unless you're getting like 2 to 3 firsts and 2 seconds, like you need at least 4 good picks to move up to 4. Like if you're not getting 2 1s, a 2 and a 3, or 3 1s and a 2, don't move off from 4. Just don't. Because then you're immediately going to drop to 11, and then you're taking the second or third best at certain positions. Not a good idea. But at 4 with the trade is J.J. McCarthy going to the Vikings. Now, J.J. McCarthy is an interesting quarterback prospect to me because at Michigan, the way that they played offense wasn't really conducive to showing off a quarterback's talents. It was very much so we just need a game manager and someone who's not going to lose us the game because they were very run-centric. Blake Corum definitely went ahead and helped that because over the last few years, he has been one of the best running backs in all of college football. And, even though we did get to see J.J. McCarthy display his talents every now and then, it wasn't like some of the other quarterbacks in this draft. It wasn't like he was playing for Lincoln Riley where they're throwing the football like 85% of the time. No, this was like he's throwing the football like 30 to 40% of the time. Now, NFL scouts, GMs, coaches, they're like drooling over J.J. McCarthy. And his draft stock has been fluctuating out of this world. And Jim Harbaugh has definitely been a proponent in that, hype train because he's gone ahead and he has spoken insanely highly of J.J. McCarthy to the point where J.J. McCarthy was like a low to mid first round pick when the season had ended. And now some people have him at number 4 with teams trading up to go get him. There's some other mock drafts I think have him at like the second or first quarterback taken off the board. Now, to me, like, that's confusing because, like, what happened between, the end of the college football season to now to really just skyrocket him to that point? Like, who's really driving this hype train? Which scouts are really going ahead and buying in to J.J. McCarthy as one of, if not the best quarterback in this draft class? I don't necessarily agree with that. But, nonetheless, the Vikings do need a quarterback badly. They lost Kirk Cousins, and they don't really have anybody there. Like when you look at the names that Minnesota has, there's nobody. And if you want Justin Jefferson to want to stay in Minnesota for more than just the bag, go get him a quarterback. Now, trading up for McCarthy at 4, I believe is a stretch. I think that you could potentially keep all your picks and then draft like Penix at like either 11, or if he falls, you can get him at 23. I don't think that's necessarily bad. Michael Penix has shown to be a stud. I think Michael Penix is going to have a great career as long as he goes to the right situation because he's going to get drafted in the later picks. So like the odds are he's going to get selected by a better team, which is incredible. So if you are the Vikings with a decent roster, great coaching staff, one of, if not the best receiver in football, you got to go ahead and weigh the pros and cons to trading up, because a lot of that draft capital that they have could really help the overall health of the team. Now, I understand you want to go ahead and get the quarterback right, but JJ McCarthy at 4 is a pretty big stretch to me. But nonetheless, at 5, he has another projected trade. He has the Jets moving up to take the Chargers pick at 5 to go get Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, this is what makes sense to me. The second that the quarterbacks are done being drafted and we go into every other position, I think Marvin Harrison has to be the first player taken off the board, because I think overall in the draft, he's the second best player. I think Caleb Williams is the best player available in this draft, regardless of position. And then it goes to Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 2. So the Jets doing this makes a lot of sense. Aaron's not going to play forever, but he's saying that he's going to give you at least a few more years, 1, maybe 2, before he hangs the cleats up. To pair Garrett Wilson with Marvin Harrison, yeah, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. And if I'm Aaron Rodgers put in that situation, yeah, it's going to make me more likely to want to stick around for longer if I get to throw to these guys consistently. So it's a great pick. Now, if the Chargers don't trade with the Jets and the Chargers stay at 5, I think Joe Alt is the best selection that they could get. Now, I mean, they could stay at 5 and they could also take Marvin if the quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I can't complain if they pick Marvin Harrison Jr. over Joe Alt. But if Marvin Harrison's off the board at 4 to the Cardinals, and then they're at 5, I think you go Joe Alt at 5. I don't think you go Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze. I think you go Joe Alt at 5. And this is my theory behind it. I believe that solidifying the offensive line is a much bigger priority at the 5 position than it is, grabbing a wide receiver, because the wide receiver class is pretty deep. You can get great wide receiver talent in the 2nd and the 3rd round in this year's draft. But in regards to tackles, you're not going to get anyone close to Joe Alt in the 2nd or 3rd round. You can get guys who are close to Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas in the 2nd and 3rd round. Close. Not the same, not the overall, like you're going from like an A- to like a B, but very close. I don't think that gap is necessarily the same with Joe Alt. Joe Alt is like an A+ graded tackle. The second that you dip into the 2nd round, you're in the B-. Like it's not necessarily the same quality of player that you're going to get with tackles that you can still get with the receivers in the later rounds. So that's my thought process on it. Now at 6 is the New York Giants with their pick. Now he has Malik Neighbors at 6 going to the Giants. Now I think that makes great sense. Malik Neighbors is clearly the 2nd best receiver in this draft class. Some people are saying that he's the 1st, but I'm going to go with Marvin Harrison at 1. Malik Neighbors to the New York Giants really does make sense. I don't even think last year they had a single 1,000-yard receiver. And if you're going to be stuck with Daniel Jones and his terrible contract, I think it makes a lot of sense to go out and get him a wide receiver to help. I think that especially now that Saquon is gone, there's a lot of production that left the building. So you have to go ahead and be able to replace that production as efficiently as possible. And I think Malik Neighbors is like the perfect guy to go ahead and do that. Like if you look at his measurables, he's like almost exactly the same player as Ja'Marr Chase. He's just a little bit faster because Ja'Marr Chase ran in the 4.4s, and yeah, I think officially he ran like a 4.41 or something like that. And Malik Neighbors, I think, ran an unofficial 4.35. So when it comes to players, if you can get the second coming of Ja'Marr Chase, yeah, that's an incredible pick. Go ahead and do that, because him paired along with Isaiah Hodgins, paired along with Darius Slayton, that's a good receiver core. Jalen Hyatt's there too, so you get great speed all across the board. So you got good receivers to go ahead and throw to. Malik Neighbors becomes your clear head and shoulders, number 1 receiver there right away. And hopefully he can have an impact to the Giants like Garrett Wilson had an impact to the Jets, where right away you see the talent, it flies off the board, he's making plays, putting up numbers, scoring touchdowns, and really helping out that offense. So that's what I hope for them. He has at number 7 with Tennessee Joe Alt out of Notre Dame going to the Titans. With the Titans, they need help everywhere, but you want to help Will Levis out. Now, they went ahead and they got Calvin Ridley out of free agency. They spent a lot more money than they should have, but they got him. So now that you have Calvin Ridley there at one, I think the next best thing to go ahead and do is you either help out your running back core in Tajay Spears or you help out that offensive line. They're going offensive line and they're taking the best available offensive lineman at Joe Alt. There's a thing in the NFL where certain schools just always tend to produce the best players at certain positions. That's why we have like running back U, wide receiver U, QB. Notre Dame is like the best school when it comes to offensive linemen. When you're looking for an offensive lineman, especially like a tackle or a guard, more so than the center position, yeah, you look at Notre Dame. You look at what they're doing. Notre Dame has a history of putting out some of the best offensive linemen in the entire NFL. So I think Joe Alt at 7 really does work. At number 8, the first defensive player comes off the board to the Atlanta Falcons. Now that you got the new head coach there, he wants to go ahead and help set the tone. And, now that they have Kirk Cousins signed at quarterback, they're not going to draft a quarterback at 8. They're not going to move up. So what are they going to do? They're going to help out that defense. They have a lot of good players on the offensive side. Remember, Bijan went in the at 1 the year before. Then he had Kyle Pitts. Then he had Drake London. They have great offensive weapons there. Now it's time for them to go ahead and try and help out that defense. So you have AJ Terrell, you have Jesse Bates. Those are two great secondary pieces. Dallas Turner out of Alabama is going to go 8 to the Falcons. He's going to help out that defensive line. He's going to help out Grady Jarrett. On one, so you're gonna have Grady Jarrett on one side, you're gonna have Dallas Turner on the other side. That could really go ahead and help out Atlanta. When you want that bookend defensive end who's gonna go after the quarterback, yeah, that's great. And that division's not necessarily the strongest. It's really not. You have the Panthers, the Bucks, and the Saints to compete with. None of those teams are necessarily screaming, playoff favorites or division favorites. Carolina is still definitely figuring out, their situation with Bryce Young and that offense in total. They just lost Brian Burns. So, their defense is definitely not going to be as good as it was last year. The Saints are the Saints. They have the worst cap situation in all of football, and they don't know what they're doing with themselves. So you don't necessarily have to worry about them. And then there's Tampa. And while I like Baker Mayfield's not the savior of Tampa like Tom did, where he helped them win a Super Bowl. He's not that. But he's probably the greatest threat that you have in the division. So go ahead and get a guy who's going to put pressure on him and is going to make him play worse. That's what Dallas Turner does. Now Chicago is back at 9. Chicago at 9 is selecting Rome Odunze, the wide receiver out of Washington. He has always been, to me, at one of my favorite players in this draft. Coming out at the end of the season, he was my second favorite wide receiver in this draft behind Marvin Harrison. But going ahead and really watching some of the tape, really getting to get a look at the stats, and then watching, some of the things that were going on at Pro Day and the Combine, Malik Neighbors has slid into that 2 spot for me, but Rome Odunze is literally right there at the 3 position. I think that he runs incredible routes, and he is a great red zone threat. He's that one dude where the second that you cross the 20-yard line, he's one of those X factor players that you can rely on to go ahead and make big plays. And it showed because, dude was in the national title game. We had ample amount of games to go ahead and watch him just excel against corner after corner after corner, just burn all of them. It wasn't really that fair, when a DB played against Rome Odunze. He was exceptional. So to go ahead and add Rome Odunze along to Keenan Allen, along to DJ Moore, along to Cole Kmet, now when Caleb Williams steps on the field, he's going to have, on any given play, 4 legitimate threats. Rome Odunze is a number 1 receiver on any team. He could easily play like a number 1 receiver, or at worst be a 1B. to where is a number one receiver on any other team, but because of the talent that's on said team, he's a 1B. Kind of like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So clearly we know DJ Moore is the true number one. Rome Odunze could be 1B. And then if your third best receiver is Keenan Allen, which I think that Rome Odunze will be the third best for a given amount of time, and Keenan will be that number two. But if Rome Odunze is your third best option at receiver, yeah, that's a spoil of riches. That's a really good position to be in. And that's why I think Caleb Williams is a very high chance of success very early on. Now we get to top 10 pick, number 10. This is where the Jets originally were, and now where the Chargers are at because of that trade. The Chargers at 10 are going with Oregon State tackle Talise Fuaga. Now, I haven't necessarily watched too much tape on him. I know that a lot of scouts, they kind of vary with who the number two tackle is between him and the other tackle out of Alabama. I forget his name. But from what I hear Mauler. I hear, big body who's aggressive, who at the point of attack can really go ahead and help any offensive line. And there's somebody who, honestly, from what I've heard, can go ahead and move between the tackle and the guard position. Now, he's a more true tackle than he is guard, but I think if you're an offense who you have two bookend tackles, but your guard position is pretty weak, then you could easily go ahead and move him over to guard. But I think in Los Angeles, him opposite of Rashawn Slater, yeah, that's a great tackle position to go ahead and be at. And I think helping out that offensive line is a huge necessity for the Chargers. I'm a proponent, or not a proponent, but I'm someone who strongly believes in invest your money into your lines, especially in the draft, where you can go ahead and get guys and have them on cheap contracts for 4 to 5 years. You do that with your lines. And then they're the people who you most likely go ahead and sign to your big extensions, because every team is allowed a few players to really spend some money on. And I think outside of the quarterback, the lines are really where you go ahead and spend a lot of your money. I think at your skill positions is where you get a lot of your value players, or where you get lucky with drafting sometimes and can get a stud wide receiver for cheap. I think that's where you go ahead and do that. So having the Chargers drafting a top flight tackle at 10 makes a whole lot of sense. And to me I definitely think even at 5 where they should go. So if they stay at 5 and Marvin Harrison's off the board, you go Joe Alt. If this trade actually does end up happening and they're at 10, yeah, Talise Fuaga makes a great, addition to your offensive line. You're still getting one of the top 3 players at this position in the entire draft. So to be able to go ahead and get him at 10, I do think is a great landing spot for him. Now the Cardinals, they were at 4, but because of the trade, now they're at 11. Okay. He has Jared Verse, the defensive end out of Florida State, going there. I think helping out that defensive line is always going to go ahead and be beneficial. I think that, maybe this is a position where you trade back again, because I think that they definitely need more offensive help than they do defensive help. But their defensive line is also pretty bad too. So Jared Verse here makes a lot of sense. At 12 with the Broncos, this is a pick that we'll have to go ahead and wait and see draft night, because this is easily a team that can go ahead and move up. They're eating a lot of dead cap because of Russell Wilson. But at 12, he has them taking Brock Bowers out of Georgia. Brock Bowers is one of those guys that the second that he touched the field at Georgia, we knew he was like that. And the coaching staff and the players for a good amount of time have all gone ahead and stated that Brock Bowers is the best person on that team, period. Now, we know how deep Georgia's roster is. We know how many star players are on that team. And for a lot of people to unanimously say that Brock Bowers is the best person on that team, that speaks very highly of him. A lot of people compare Brock Bowers to George Kittle. Maybe not necessarily the blocker that George Kittle is, but just the overall threat at the tight end position. He's very reminiscent of George Kittle. And if that's your comp, yeah, you're doing pretty good. At 13, the Vegas Raiders have Michael Penix being selected out of Washington. Vegas needs help. yes, they signed Gardner Minshew, in free agency, but Gardner Minshew is not a quarterback who's going to win you a Super Bowl. He's a game manager at best, and he is a backup at worst. Michael Penix Jr. at 13, I think, is a little rich for Michael Penix, but nonetheless, I think that he is an incredible quarterback who is very underrated, especially compared to the rest of the field at his position. I think that Michael Penix is somebody who, being put into the right position, will go ahead and surprise a lot of people. A lot of people want to get on Michael Penix because of his mechanics. They say that, his mechanics are very spotty and that leads to a lot of inconsistency in his throwing. But I think that when Michael's on, he's on. And his arm talent is almost right there with anybody else in this draft class. I don't know necessarily about like his deep ball, compared to everybody else in this draft, especially compared to guys like Joe Milton who can just throw the football the entire field. But Michael Penix Jr. can make every throw in the book. He makes every play that you need him to play. And when his mechanics and his feet are all working in unison, and he's not, trying to do too much, yeah, this dude is an absolute home run at the quarterback position. I just think he just needs to land in the right position. Um, I think that right away, he's not nearly as ready for the NFL as some of these other quarterbacks are. But I think that with time and with a good situation, sky's the limit for this dude. At 14, the Saints have, now I'm gonna butcher this name, uh, Olumiwa Fashanu. Penn State, tackle. Um, I don't know much about him. I'm gonna be real with you guys. He's not one of the dudes that I've necessarily gone ahead and kept my eye on throughout this draft process. But if the scouts are going ahead and saying that this dude's a top flight tackle, then yeah, he's a top flight tackle. I'm not too sure. I've heard a lot more about the tackle out of Alabama than I have out of him. I can't remember the tackle's name right now. At 15, and this is the last pick that we're going to go ahead and get into before we sign off, the Indianapolis Colts are going to pick Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. Quinyon Mitchell has been somebody who, when the season ended, I had no idea who this guy was. And the second that the season ended, I immediately found out who he was, especially he had a very, very good weekend over at not the Rose Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl. He was a dude who at the combine completely, just went ahead and showcased his talents, especially running in the low 4.3s for his 40 time. Doing the same thing as his pro day, going ahead and excelling there, and somebody who, he's showing all the traits that you would want. He's showing good size, he's showing good footwork, good mobility, exceptional top end speed. And at the Senior Bowl, he was showing that he could easily go ahead and same thing. If healthy, he's somebody who can easily be a shutdown corner in the NFL. He is somebody who actually, in one of the Madden leagues that I have, I drafted him in the first round. I had a mid first round pick and he was available there, and so I picked him. I saw that his speed rating was out of this world, so I was just like, if I'm gonna get a corner, I might as well get one who can go ahead and keep up with a lot of these receivers in the NFL now, because we have guys left and right, coming through out of the combine these last 2 years, who just one after another are running in the high to low 4.3s. Some of these guys are running in the 4.2s. So, with that influx of speedy receivers coming into the NFL, you're going to need corners who are going to go ahead and match that speed. Quinyon Mitchell is somebody who at a 4.33, yeah, he's going to be able to go ahead and keep up with these receivers. And when you look at his tape, not only does he have that frontline speed to run a 4.33, but he has game speed. Like when you watch the tape, he looks fast on the field as well, playing the game rather than just, when he's running his 40. So I think for the Indianapolis Colts to go ahead and help out that secondary is big for them. Anything, honestly, to go ahead and help out the overall flow of the team. Because when you can help out that defense, it makes life for Anthony Richardson a little bit easier, because he realizes he has that second part of the team to go ahead and rely on when he's not on the field. Anything to help him out, especially, hopefully after injury, he comes back and, he plays well. And I think that Indianapolis right now, they're just trying to go ahead and surround that roster with athletic freaks of nature. Anthony Richardson being one, Quinyon Mitchell now being another. Uh, you know, anything to help out. Indianapolis is one of those teams that they are a super wild card, and I think that they're going to go as far as Anthony Richardson can take them. Um, Thankfully they got the situation with Jonathan Taylor all figured out. But I think that, moving forward, they really need to go ahead and shore up a few pieces. Thankfully, Pittman signed back with them, so they have their star wide receiver, they got their star running back. Their offensive line hopefully is gonna stay packed and keep Anthony Richardson healthy. Now all you got to do is just go ahead and help out that defense. I think in the later rounds too, they could probably draft a few more receivers to help out Pittman. Who knows if they go for guys like Keon Coleman, Franklin out of Oregon. Um, maybe they get lucky and can trade up and then go ahead and get Brian Thomas out of LSU. There's a few guys that they can go after in the later rounds, but Quinyon Mitchell at the corner definitely helps that secondary out, which they need it. Especially when you're going ahead and competing, with other teams in that division. Like the Texans, who now have C.J. Stroud and all those weapons that they have over there with Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Yeah, you're gonna need corners who can keep up. Tank Dell is that dude. He's got speed. Nico Collins is not a player to be messed around with. He was good ever since he was playing at Michigan. Definitely doing a lot better now in the NFL than he did in college, but he was still great at college nonetheless. But you're going to need corners who can go ahead and keep up with the receivers in your division. So that's where the top 15 picks lie. You guys let me know in the comments of what you think about some of these picks, what you think about some of my opinion on these picks, and if you think that I definitely want to know where some of you guys have your opinions with the top 3 quarterbacks in this draft and where you think not only they're going to end up, but what their success is going to look like depending on where they land. But yeah, so like I said, that's going to be it for me. Thank you for going ahead and tuning into the channel. Don't forget to go ahead, subscribe to the channel, like to the video. Also, don't forget to go ahead and check out our channel on TikTok at the Statement Sports Podcast. I go ahead and I post a lot of shorter form videos there where we can go ahead and end up getting some pretty good videos on there. That one with the TikTok channel, that one is where news gets posted a lot faster, so I'll tend to go ahead and post up sometimes 10 to 15 seconds after the stories get broken. So it's definitely one thing to go ahead and keep an eye for if you want any more content from me. But that's going to be it from your boy. Thank you for going ahead and watching. Peace.